Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. This is part 2 of the Watermod shipbuilding videos. Specifically, this is more about the visual design aspects of shipbuilding. As you can see here, I have a couple parts of the hull design that I frequently do. First of all, let's start with the bow of the ship designs. You can see that I have made my usual bow design, which starts off like this. You see, you get the longest point here, and then it slowly gets shorter and shorter until you get to a certain point, which is the shortest. Usually, I would do is have something along the lines of a 3x1x1 like this. If you don't have armor ramps, I'm not entirely sure what you would do. You'd probably just use something along the lines of this, and then obviously fill in the gaps like this, but obviously doesn't look as neat, but it requires one less mod is the other thing. Now, you probably could also, probably recreate that kind of design in this. Though this might be a bit more harder to do, I'm not entirely sure. But this is one of the other parts of the bow I do when I'm making ships. This has been a part of the design idea for a while now, like when, for example, you can see this idea with the vernier, but at that time, it didn't have this pattern of bow where it, like, becomes shorter until a certain point where then it goes back to being longer, like this. So it doesn't make that advanced, realistic bow look, but, you know, yeah. Yeah, you got this. I'm pretty sure that's all I can say about the bow. Let's go to probably the next logical point. The stern. This is one of the many designs you can use, though this is probably the hardest one you could use. And that is the World War II era style battleship stern that usually kind of goes like this, almost like a, almost like you cut in half an oval. And then, the reason why I say this is the hardest is because it's harder to go from this point on, like this point on, you can vary the height of this depending on how high the water line is on your ship, depending on how well you made your ship float or how big it is, or how light it is in general. The reason why I say why this design's hard to make a good transfer for is because of stuff like this. You can't, there is no part that fits this size that is like this. So you have to use parts along the lines of like this, this, and this to get the proper shape. Which is why I say it's the hardest design. I would say if you're trying to go for something of a easier design as a starter design, I would say a modern style stern, which is usually very boxy, well, to the point where it literally is just a box. But the how that transfers usually is that it goes a bit like, hold on, goes a bit like, hold on, I'm gonna have to actually bring out the thing. I didn't exactly plan for this, but that's okay. It goes kind of a bit like, oh my god, yeah, it goes kind of a bit like that, and then you would have the flat portion like that, and then it would go on like this. Oh no, I'm not planning to copy that. No. Yeah, it will go on like this until you've reached the bottom of your hull. This is what I use for a battleship-style hull shape when it comes to the cross-section when you're looking at it from, like, the rear or front. I usually do this, kind of like a very flattened circle that you cut in half. Because, obviously, ships need to displace water. And also, with this kind of design, since it's flatter on the bottom, it means it's more stable. Now, that might not exactly work with Watermod, since Watermod's obviously, you know, a mod, it's not going to be entirely perfect. But, yeah, you can do this design. Again, this design also requires mods, but you could potentially work with this. Plus, you can just use the, those 2x1x1 parts that come in base SE. That are like, instead of it being a 1 block, it comes in as 2. Like, yeah, that ups PCU, but that's also a lot more easier to do as a vanilla player. You might also be wondering, what's up with this? Very simple. Red on this means heavy armor. You might be wondering, why is there heavy armor here, and here, and here? It's simple. You might recall from last video how the boats float. With that, that functions a lot like real life, I would have to say, to a degree. So it means you have to make sure that your center of mass is low. Like, let's say around here-ish or something like that, or around here. Anything higher, like around where the waterline is a bit of an iffy, like, thing. Because you might capsize, might or might not. Though, if you're building something like a civilian ship, that's not going to be as big of an issue, but if you're building something like, let's say, a battleship, or an aircraft carrier, or something like that, then it's going to make it a lot more harder. Which is why you would probably want to have heavy armor, or, like, composite, most of the bottom half of the ship, like this. Though, you would also need to pay attention to how much you're putting on, because obviously, you put too much on, you're gonna sink, or be lower than you intended. But being lower than you intended is not too bad, just means, yeah, kind of have to make the waterline line, the black line you will usually see, or the end of the red line you will usually see when you're looking at ships. Because, obviously, you know, building a proper ship hull is a lot more sophisticated, is a lot more of a lengthy process than you would expect. But once you understand it, it's not too hard to figure out. Because most of it's just, you know, doing stuff like this. Like, for example, having something like this design here, making something along the lines of a heavy armor keel. Making it, you know, obviously, having the center of mass lower, making it so you're a lot more stable. Alternatively, what you could just do is completely negate the whole, like, bottom half of the hull and just make it so the entire bottom's entirely flat. Which, yes, that isn't exactly realistic, but that would probably be the easier way of doing it if you're trying to go for more simpler designs that actually function. Because, let's face it, doing this and this is a lot easier than trying to deal with this, and also not to mention dealing with the whole things I was on about earlier about the whole hull shenanigans. So if you're doing something like that and you're trying to do a simple hull, you can easily just, you know, do that. Now, I'm pretty sure I've explained most of the things that are really necessary when it comes to designing your hull, which I would say probably designing the hull is the hardest part out of everything involving ship design in SC using Watermod. When you're done with the hull, you're basically good and you're walking on easy street afterwards when making the rest. You just need to make sure the ship's properly balanced and also on the right height level. Which at that point, that's just as easy as just making sure some blocks are heavy and some aren't. But, I would say this is probably the end of this video, and might even be the end of the series, unless anyone wants more stuff, like more ideas on how to do the full design of the bow and stern, which if people want that, I will make a video about that with perhaps using some ships I've made as models. Anyways, see you guys next time in the next video, and also my Discord servers down below, as well as SM's YouTube channel. Goodbye!